We all know about the five senses. The five physical senses were created in order to give us access to the world, in order to get to know our reality. Without them, the spirit would be completely blind. We have no information about the outside world whatsoever. However, as we know, we're not just the physical five senses. There's more to us than the five senses. There's a complete being inside that has his own capabilities, has his own intelligence of how he perceives reality. These realities are as real and more real than what we pick up with our physical senses. And so we need to get to know the other side of ourselves, the spiritual side, the deeper side, the side that's more intimately involved in our experience. And so if we want to get to know the internal self, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it in such a way that we can look at the physical in order to learn the spiritual. And so the spiritual has five senses of its own that correlate to the physical senses. And these relationships can be found in the Psukim, in Tanakh, where the Psukim create associations between words, which are the basis of a language. And the purpose is to allow man to understand his real self based on his external self. Like the Pasuk says, Mipsori echze Eloika. I'll see the divine from the flesh. And the spirit is B'tzalmeinu Kidneseinu, it's in the form of the divine. And so we're going to see it from the flesh, we're going to see it from how we perceive physically. And so the first one of our senses is sight. And sight is our ability to perceive reality. It's the most basic way that we perceive what's happening on our physical plane. And so sight compares to wisdom. Like the Pasuk says, V'libi ro har b'chochma. My heart saw a lot of wisdom. So you see, the ear relates to sight. And this is why in the Zohar, when the Zohar wants to tell you a reality, it says, Tochazi, come and see. It's not talking to your physical eyes. Your physical eyes are going to be looking at the page, but the Tochazi is talking to your neshama. It's talking to the pnimius of you, and it says, come and see, use your spiritual sense of sight and see the reality that you're in spiritually. The next chosh is shmir, sound. And sound relates to understanding, to bina. When we listen through our ears, that's how we get understanding about what's taking place. Our eyes will tell us what's taking place, but only our ears usually will give us the context to understand what's taking place. And so the Pasuk says, V'nesati la'avdecha lev shomea. The heart can hear. The heart hears through understanding. And this is why in the Gemara, when the Gemara wants to call the spirit, it says, Toshma, come and listen. Use your spiritual sense of hearing to understand the logic behind the words that I'm saying. Understand me, is what he's saying. Toshma, come and understand me. The Zohar is saying, Tochazi, come and be wise. And the Gemara says, Toshma, come and understand. The third one is smell. And smell in the spiritual is knowledge. Like the Pasuk says by Mashiach, Ve'erichoi beyiras Hashem. He will smell with his yiras shamayim. He will be able to see who else has yiras shamayim simply by the smell. He will know. Because it says, V'nochol of Ruach Hashem. A few different Ruchos it mentions, and the last one is Ruach Das v'Yiras Hashem. Das, knowledge, and Yiras Hashem, and fear of Hashem. That knowledge is called smell. Because when a person realizes what he is really interacting with, he is starting to smell the spiritual. Like when Yaakov Avinu came into Yitzchak, and he smelled the reich of Gan Eden. Because Yaakov Avinu's recognition of reality was so pure that Yitzchak can smell it. Yitzchak can feel so close. Smell is a very intimate and a close sense. It's the sense of the neshama. The next sense is taste. Taste has to do with the emotions. Our emotions give a taste to our life. If somebody goes through many days and he doesn't have positive emotions, then his life seems to be without taste, without reason, without purpose. Because the emotions allow us to experience life and to taste what life is really offering to us, what's really happening. It's not just our mind having an experience. It's through wisdom and understanding and knowledge, but there is also physical participation through emotions. And so the emotional is how we taste life. These are the midas. And these create our interactions. This creates the underlying flavor of our experience. And experience is the final sense. Experience is the sense of touch. Experience is the closest to what we really are. And that's the sense of touch. The sense of touch is everywhere within us. That's how we know ourselves, through touch. That's how we know who we are. And so the sense of touch is experience itself for the soul. When the soul can experience itself on the spiritual dimensions, only then can it gain peace. Because the physical side, the senses that work for the body, they speak a specific type of language. And that language refers back to the body. But the senses of the soul, they're what feed the soul. They're what inform the soul. And when those senses are not being stimulated properly, then the soul doesn't appreciate living within the body. And that causes a constriction of the heart. That causes that heart can no longer find joy, can no longer find happiness in the experience that it's having. And this leads us back to the Oragonas, the light of the Jewish heart. The human heart is the most sensitive of all the organisms on earth, because it responds to information about things that haven't happened millions of miles away, or maybe didn't even happen, but just the idea that it might happen. The human heart responds to that. And the human heart is the one that's in charge of how life is going to feel for us while we're in our body. Because the heart is the king of the body. The heart's the king of all the limbs. And the biggest enemy of the human heart is anger. Anger is the opposite of life for the human heart. This is as far as the heart and the mind can go. When the heart and the mind are united, the person is in a state of flow. The person feels integrated into life. And the person behaves accordingly. They are integrated into life. But when the mind turns against the heart, and the most extreme version of a mind turning against the heart is anger, then the heart doesn't get what it needs in order to feel comfortable. And that means that we lose our heart. And this can actually be seen, playing out. People, People know to say that the person has lost their heart, but we don't understand how literal that really is. There is really a connection between the brain and the heart that can be severed. And that happens because of pain, because of anger, because of alienation. And then we don't feel the way that we used to feel. And then people do terrible things because they've lost light of what's really right. They've lost their compass, they've lost access to themselves. And this is why the spiritual decimation is so harmful, even physically. Because when people are not looking out for each other, when people don't have access to their heart, when people don't come from a place of compassion, that we become our own and each other's biggest enemies. And we're so engrossed in the details of the story of what's happening, we're so engrossed in the physical five senses that we don't even realize who and how is violating our spiritual five senses. Because at the end of the day, if our heart is not having the right experience so that it feels healthy, then it doesn't integrate with the brain. And that means that we don't get to be ourselves. And that means that we might be doing things that are extremely harmful for ourselves, and we're just not aware. We're just not realizing it. And so the Nes of Hanukkah is trying to tell us, is trying to wake us up to realize that there is a darkness in our life that we, and only us, can fight. Nobody else will fight this fight for us. We're the only ones that can fight it because it's happening in our world of thought. And nobody has access to our world of thought other than ourselves. And all the evil monsters in that world, we created. Nobody else was in there. Other people presented to our physical five senses information, but the contamination of our spiritual five senses, we're the only ones that can do. We didn't know any better. We didn't really understand. But we are ultimately the ones doing it. Because nobody else has access to that place. Nobody else can write in your imagination. And so, the message is that being a human being is not about the five senses. The five senses can help you figure out what it means to be a human being. But that's not what you are. And the proof to that is that one day it's going to be taken away from you. So if it's going to be taken away from you, it can't be who you are, is it? Can it? And so that realization means that we have to find something that we can invest in that's not them. And that's becoming aware of how we really came to be here and what it means to be here. The Zohar says, Abba Yosad Brata, the father, created a daughter. And this refers to the Chochma Elyoina, the wisdom that's beyond comprehension, the wisdom from where everything came to be the way that it is. That's called Abba, that's called the father. And the daughter is the intelligence that comes into the world and becomes human. That's the daughter. And that's called Chochma Tator, Chochma Shloima. Shlomo HaMelech, his wisdom was from the ultimate wisdom that created the universe, incarnating into a human body. That's the daughter. That daughter is called the Shechina. The Shechina is that intelligence that was created in order to dwell within us and in order to create our experience. And so when we forget our spiritual side, when we forget our internal being, then we cause we allow that the Shekhinah, that this intelligence, should suffer, should feel not at home in her very own home. And this is ultimately why we're in Golus. Because we've forgotten what it means to be us and how we're supposed to be it. And so therefore we were given a message from thousands of years ago about what it means to be us, so that we can awaken the proper settings within ourselves, the proper beliefs, the proper understandings, and become the one that we really are. And all our Yomim Tovim, all our celebrations, all our crying and all our laughing relate to this one single message, that we are in Golus because we have forgotten something important about what it means to be us. And the Torah is here to remind us. So this is what we have to be looking for. This is what we have to be looking for as we celebrate. This is what we have to be looking for as we go through our lives, is the real meaning behind this experience. Because that's the only way that we're really going to have the experience, is if we actually know the meaning of it and we know how to do it and we know how to approach it and we know how it's supposed to feel. And what we're supposed to be doing and what we're supposed to be not doing, or saying and not saying, or thinking and not thinking, and how actually to have the power, to have the energy to be able to accomplish all that. So all this is available to us, but it requires that we pay attention, that we notice that there's more to life than what we think, than what we can imagine. The one who created us, the intelligence that manifested this reality, has a lot more capability than what we give him credit for. And we're selling ourselves cheap. That's what Chanukah is really telling us. So we should all be zoche to be able to tap into this message and be able to find the true essence of what it means to be us, the Oragonus. And through that we'll be zoche to the Gula Shleim of Meir B'Yameinu.